Huigar Bones here, and today I have something a little different for you. Today I'm reviewing Star Wars Visions Season 2. I had planned on reviewing Season 1 when it came out, but I just couldn't find the time to make it properly, and I just decided not to do it. But I still might do Season 1, quick review, since I'm doing this for Season 2. But I'll probably do that at a later time. Just a little warning for you guys. There may be some spoilers in this review, so if you haven't watched Star Wars Visions or you plan on watching it, I'd highly recommend you do that first. It's definitely worth it. So I just finished watching the whole season of Star Wars Visions Season 2, and I have to say this is a vast improvement to Season 1 in my opinion. While I liked some of the episodes in Season 1, especially Episode 1, the rest just didn't resonate with me or really feel like Star Wars. It felt like I was watching something from a different franchise. Sometimes I'd forget that I'm even watching something Star Wars till they showed a lightsaber or droids, and while I get they're all vastly different by design, I found that it ended up taking me out of the experience sometimes. And thankfully, I didn't have that problem at all with this season. In fact, I found that the opposite was true. And with that, I guess I'll start my review with each episode. Then I'll give a total review score for the whole season. Starting with episode 1, Sith. Now, this was absolutely beautiful. Visions definitely knows how to start a season strong. And I feel like I've seen this style of animation before. It kind of reminds me of Love, Death, and Robots. I looked it up, but I'm not sure if they're the same animators or the same studio. I couldn't find anything. But I just love the colors and how they play with the light and the dark. Not to mention the action scenes. They were super exciting. I could feel the power in their moves. And again, with the color palette changing during the conflict and the fight and coming in and out of like her artist reality. It's just cool. It's also cool to see kind of the opposite side with the story focused on a former Sith finding their own path rather than, a typical reluctant Jedi hero that we usually see. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just refreshing to see. And most importantly, this felt like Star Wars. It's like different enough to have its own independent story and unique style without sacrificing its identity as Star Wars or set in the Star Wars universe. Which is a huge plus for me. One complaint that I do have, or I guess it's like one small minor complaint, is that the audio for the voices seemed a bit low. Like, I didn't need to stop or replay anything, but it did take me a second to realize what they were trying to say sometimes, especially the Sith Lord with his mask. But with that in mind, I think I'd give this episode a 10 out of 10. It was a fantastic start to this season. Onward with episode 2 of Screecher's Reach. This was another awesome, amazing episode, and this time from Cartoon Saloon, which it's an animation studio I'm familiar with. I absolutely love The Secret of Kells, so I might be a bit biased on this one. Even though this was probably the least Star Wars-like, I found myself really liking this one anyway. And I'd never thought I'd see a Banshee Sith, but now that I have to say it's given me some ideas for like future campaigns in my Star Wars RPG. The story was pretty straightforward, just about a group going to investigate a haunted cave, so there isn't much to talk about on that front. But the ending was pretty dang sad and a bit eerie and sinister, but it did leave me wanting more, and I really want to know who that Sith lady at the end is, and it makes me wonder if they'll do like a comic series on the story. I mean, I'd read that. All in all, a solid 8 out of 10. Next, we have episode 3, In the Stars. This one's about two sisters trying to survive on a planet ravaged by the Imperials. And first off, I have to say that the character designs are awesome. I think this is a new race specific to this episode, but I really like to learn more about them and the planet they're on as well. Animation is beautiful, no surprise there. And I've always been a fan of that stop motion-esque kind of animation, though I'm not sure if this is actually stop motion or completely CGI. Either way, it looks really good. I also like that they reuse the factory worker outfits that they had in Rebels and Bad Batch. So I think that was a nice touch. The story also reminded me slightly of the Avatar episode, The Painted Lady, where they destroy the factory and get rid of the smog. But all in all, it was a pretty cool episode. I think I'd also give this one an 8 out of 10. Then we have episode 4, I Am Your Mother. I grew up watching a lot of claymation stuff like Wallace and Gromit, Nightmare Before Christmas, Chicken Run, Mary and Max. So this one hits close to home. It reminds me it's my childhood. It's pretty nostalgic. I also very much appreciate the Wedge cameo. Wedge is one of my favorite characters, and it's nice to see my boy getting some love. As far as the story goes, it's a nice, heartwarming episode to watch for Mother's Day, and it gives me the episode 1 pod race vibes, so that's pretty cool. Other than that, I don't have much to say on this one. It was a good, enjoyable episode, and a good 7 out of 10 for me, which isn't bad. Next is episode 5, Journey to the Dark Head. While I thought the Ninth Jedi from season 1 would make for a good anime, this episode would make for a good Star Wars show, and I'll probably explain this better in maybe the season 1 review or something else. But ever since I was a kid back in 2006, 2007, the thought of anime and Star Wars combining absolutely repulsed and disgusted me. I used to hate most anime as a kid. I just had a different perspective back then. I love anime now, but even until now, I still didn't like the idea of Star Wars anime or just combining the two. And when Visions Season 1 came out, I thought that would kind of change my perspective, but it didn't really have that much effect on it. That was until this episode came out in Season 2. And while I might not be completely convinced, I think I'd be interested in seeing a Star Wars anime show like this. I think the main factor would have to be the familiar designs and style of the Star Wars universe. While the previous anime episodes in season 1, they were just too out of place and unrecognizable to the Star Wars universe. It just felt like it was a completely different franchise just using Star Wars assets. And that's not to knock on the animators or anything. It's just how I felt when I was watching it. And the action scenes were pretty good in this episode. It reminded me of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. In fact, the whole episode kind of reminded me of that. One thing I did notice was the dialogue felt a little rushed, kind of like the characters were talking too fast or they're forcing out their lines. I'm not sure if it was a lip syncing issue or not, but it's not a big deal for me. Now, I actually don't want to spoil anything too much on this one, so I'll just give it my rating. It is a 8 out of 10. Pretty solid episode, and it's starting to convince me. I think I might be interested in seeing a Star Wars anime show. Now we're on to episode 6, The Spy Dancer. This is probably my personal favorite episode this season. Maybe tied with Sith, but I don't know, I think this one might be higher than that. I just love hand-drawn animation more than anything, and I think this might be my favorite. It just seems so familiar and reminds me of older animation. Maybe this nostalgia plays a part on the favoritism. The action scenes were amazing and kept me on the edge of my seat the whole time. I kept thinking someone was gonna die, something. And I also love the fighting style, the dancer's fighting style. It's very graceful but powerful. But I think the highlight on this one is actually the story. Even though it wasn't very long, it had my attention the whole time, and I want more. I'm not sure if they'll continue the story, but I really am hoping for more on this one. This is a solid 10 out of 10 for me on this episode. Don't want to say too much, but yeah, solid 10 out of 10. Favorite this season so far. On to episode 7, The Bandits of Golak. This episode gave me a Telltale Games kind of vibe too, and that's not a bad thing. I also noticed a lot of Clone Wars models in this episode. It kind of makes me wonder if they remade them from scratch or they managed to import them somehow. Either way, they look spot on. I saw a Master Sanube in there, the Gothar, but it almost I was watching an episode from Bad Batch or Clone Wars. Not much to say on this one. The animation's really good. The action scenes were a little bit off to me on this one with the little slow mo they were doing. Yeah, I wasn't quite sure where they're going on with that one there. But nonetheless, it was a pretty decent episode. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Next, with episode 8, The Pit. This is another example that proves when done right, Star Wars and anime have the potential to be great when they're combined together. And I really like how these past few episodes this season have shown just how cruel and awful the Empire can be, and just heartless and ruthless. And it kind of reminds me of the Andor, and how the Empire treats its prisoners on that one. This episode's a bit slower than the others, and that's okay. All in all, it's a good story, good solid story, and I'd give it an 8 out of 10. Would follow the light again. And last, we have episode 9, Ao's Song. This was a fun and adventurous episode compared to some of the other ones. It's cool that we get to explore so many Kyber-rich planets besides Ilum. And yeah, it's also cool to see purple Mary Ellens. We see a lot of green, but not many purple, so it was kind of cool to see that from the Jedi Master there. This episode also brings in the interesting concept of purifying a kyber crystal by singing, which is interesting and kind of makes me wonder how many other ways you can purify a kyber crystal. This was a nice, fun episode, and yeah, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. Good feelings. Alrighty, and that's going to be all 9 episodes for my quick little review on that one. A very solid season all around. I don't think there was a single episode that I disliked, and I already want to rewatch the whole season again. I think this season succeeds where the last one kind of fell flat for me, and that was the foundation and the use of the Star Wars setting. Season 1 kind of felt like they were telling a story from a completely different franchise and using Star Wars assets to tell it. And maybe that was the intent, but it just didn't mesh well or work, in my opinion, for me. And season 2 felt like actual Star Wars stories told in a different timeline, but still within the Star Wars universe, which is why it kind of rises above for me. My final rating for the season is going to be a 9 out of 10. I enjoy this season. I hope they keep this going for a while. And it seems like there was a theme, kind of overall theme for this season. I'm not sure if that's confirmed, but talked a lot about like finding your own path and going your own way, which is yeah, it's pretty interesting. It definitely fits in with the Star Wars lore story. But anyways, I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one. Bones out.